You want to know your triggers when you're healing the fearful avoidant attachment style because knowing your triggers makes it so much easier to heal them. I am Pauline and I am so happy you are here because when it comes to your triggers, you're probably so used to many of them that you don't even really notice that they're there and you don't have any idea why you're triggered or what exactly the trigger is. I call that baseline blindness, that it's your baseline. You're so used to it that you don't even really notice it, and it's really hard to figure out what it actually is that is triggering you and why. Maybe you notice, but you're like, why is that triggering to me? So when you don't know your triggers, just living life can feel overwhelming, right? It can feel exhausting because you can get triggered in every single moment. And what usually happens, and I don't want you to do this, is you judge yourself. You get triggered, and then you have this thunderstorm of emotions and feelings and sensations in your body. And then you judge yourself for feeling this way, and you should be happy or you should feel better. And knowing your triggers, I hope, will give you the empathy that you so deserve and the grace that you so deserve when you're triggered. And what makes the triggers in the fearful avoidant attachment style hard is that a lot of it is emotional flashbacks. And that means that it's a very physical, bodily experience. You may have heard of visual flashbacks where you have just pictures, images, little videos in your mind of memories that were very traumatizing. A lot of veterans, for instance, with PTSD, they have visual flashbacks as well as emotional, but also visual. They have the images. But when you have the fearful avoidant attachment style, you may have noticed that it's not necessarily images as much. And that is because the fearful avoidant attachment style is very linked with complex PTSD, which is a form of PTSD that is build up out of really small everyday occurrences. And so it's not one image, it's this feeling that gets triggered and rises to the surface. But that is very confusing when it happens. You get triggered, you have all these overwhelming feelings and emotions, and it feels very real in this moment. It feels like it's happening in this moment. And so whatever is present in the moment, whether that's your partner or whether that's something that is happening now, it seems like that is the cause of it. But it can actually be, and a lot of times is, an emotional flashback. So the old feelings rushing back in, but you can't really pinpoint them. And I really hope that this video with 12 triggers will help you pinpoint it and see it and help you see, oh, so this is what's happening. This is being triggered right now. I already made a video with 6 triggers, which are completely different from these ones, so you can watch that too. And then you'll have 18 triggers that you know of. So these are 12 completely new ones, and I want to go through them with you. The first is somebody, these can be quite surprising, somebody not being excited enough. If your partner isn't excited enough about you telling your story or having done something or having achieved something, that can actually be a trigger. It can actually be a trigger. That has a lot of things that have to do with that. I'm actually already outlining a video to make on that. If you want that, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video on it. But it has to do with the more excited your partner is, or the more excited somebody is, the more safe it feels for you, the more you feel like you are close to perfect, and therefore you are excited, or they are excited. There's so much more to it, but we have a lot of triggers, so I need to go on. But not being excited enough, it makes sense that you're triggered by that, and it has nothing to do with your relationship. It has nothing to do with your partner. It's actually a trigger of the fearful avoidant attachment style. So that is the first one. The second one is feeling powerful, which is also such a surprising one and very subtle. You might not even notice that you're feeling powerful and that it's a trigger. But feeling powerful is a trigger because when you were younger, you were not allowed to be powerful, because being powerful felt threatening to your fearful avoidant parents who wanted control over anything. And you being powerful was threatening that control. Just imagine you being a child and saying powerfully no to your fearful avoidant parent. If that causes any sort of fear, anxious feelings, just non-safe feelings, feeling powerful now that you're a grown-up, will be a trigger. And so when you've achieved something, or when you physically become strong, that can actually also be a trigger. That can trigger the fearful avoidant attachment style and all the sensations, and bringing you back into feeling weak in some way. It's so intriguing, isn't it? It's so intriguing how this works. I have a video on that too. I have a video on pretty much all of these triggers. The third one is responsibility. Oof, and this is one you might not even notice really in relationships, but more in work situations or in everyday life, because the fearful avoidant attachment style doesn't just impact your relationships, it impacts every area of your life. And so you may have gotten more responsibility at work, or you may be doing a project, whatever project it is, and you have the responsibility to do something well. Oof, that is a trigger. That can really cause you to feel almost like you have to do it well, otherwise is a lot of bad things happening. And these responsibilities can be that you took them on. It can be that you think other people think you're responsible for this. Responsibility for a fearful avoidant brain, for your fear brain, is just danger, because then you can be held accountable, and being held accountable usually came with pain when you were younger. And so you kind of dodge responsibilities if it's at all possible. And then the fourth one is expectations from other people, and they can be unspoken. So it could be that you feel like other people have expectations that you need to meet. I always felt like when I was in the crash state of the fearful avoidant attachment style, I thought everybody had expectations and I had to meet them. And both of those were not true. Not everybody has the expectations that you think they do, because those are probably expectations that your parents, your fearful avoidant parent, had from you when you were younger. But that's not the truth for everyone. There are people that don't have sky high expectations of you. And then the second one is, I thought I had to meet all of the expectations people had. So when it was in friendships, for instance, when I thought that they expected me to check in every other day or every week, I felt like I had to do that, even if they never voiced that. I felt like I had to do that to be a good friend in order for them not to abandon me. But even if I would have friends, or I would have a relationship where they have expectations of me, it is not my it is not that you always have to meet everybody's expectations. I was going to say it's not my responsibility to meet them. That's not completely true, because when you're in a healthy relationship, it is healthy to have some expectations, but it is also very healthy to talk about those expectations and to say, oh, I can meet that, but in this way, or I cannot completely probably meet that. That is a very healthy way to go about it. What I'm talking about here is that you, as a fearful avoidant, probably feel like you have to meet any and all expectations people have from you. And just saying that and thinking back to when I felt that, I feel exhausted, because it's not possible. And there are a lot of people, usually it's family, that have unhealthy expectations of you. And that those are projections of their own pain and projections of their own wants in you. And you are not obliged to meet that. I think that was the word I was looking for. You are not obliged to meet the expectations. So there's a healthy way to go about expectations, talking about that. It has a place in healthy relationships, but I want you to know that you are not obliged to meet all expectations. So that is a trigger. When you feel like there's expectations, or people actually have expectations that you feel you can't meet, but you think you have to, absolutely a trigger. Then the fifth one is having to be consistent or keep it up. And this is such an interesting one because you are probably pretty good at making a good first impression. When you're new to something or some situation, you might have fears, but it could also be that that you feel a little bit more free to just be curious and have questions. I remember I definitely had social anxiety. There was a time that I didn't really get out of the house, but what was easier for me was a first impression than actually having a consistent social relationship, whatever that may be, an actual friendship or acquaintance, being acquaintances, because I felt like as soon as I would know something about somebody, I had to remember that, and I was not allowed to forget that. And I was always so afraid to make a mistake, that somebody told me something, especially if it was vulnerable, and that I would forget it and then bring it up in a non-tactical way. So just being consistent, this is a very specific example, but being consistent in anything can be a trigger because you feel like you have to keep it up, and you have very high standards. You feel like you have to be perfect also, which is just, it's not attainable. But then when you have all those beliefs, like I have to be consistent, I have to keep it up, I can never say I don't want to do this anymore, and I have to do it perfectly, it makes sense that that's a trigger, right? It makes sense that you're triggered by that. Then the sixth one is having to be happy and present. So you have to feel a certain way and be very present and engaging. And this comes up a lot during holidays, all kinds of holidays. I mean, Christmas, New Year's, but also during Valentine's Day, for instance. You have to feel a certain way on a certain day because that is how everybody feels. And there is almost like a guideline to how you feel, because otherwise the relationship is not right, or you are not right. And that is just a sign that you have been emotionally managed when you were a child. So emotional management is what I started calling when you have to have certain feelings, and other feelings you are not allowed to have. So you can't be angry at Christmas, right? That's not allowed. You have to be happy at Christmas. And what that causes is that you suppress a lot of feelings, but also you get scared of your feelings. So when any bit of tension or anger comes up, you start feeling a lot of resistance, you start feeling fear for what that might do. And so having to be happy and present during holidays can absolutely be a trigger, especially if you're in a dynamic that is triggering in and of itself. It's really hard to just be happy and very present. You will be able to do that when you've healed, and then you'll be able to stay present even in unhealthy dynamics. But when the triggers are still very present, that's just really hard. So it makes sense that you're triggered. Then the seventh one is having to perform. When you have to do something well, when you have to do something right, it makes sense that you're triggered. When you feel like doing things wrong, making mistakes, have grave consequences. And that's probably what you've learned when you were younger, that that's the case. So just having to perform in any way it can trigger a fear of failure, which it happens in a lot of people, but it can also feel even bigger and more overwhelming, that it's actually unsafe to not do well, and that will have long-lasting consequences. I remember that when I had to perform in whatever way, I was so scared not just to fail in that moment, but also that would alter the way other people would see me and they wouldn't take me seriously anymore. So any moment I had to perform became a performance for the rest of my life, which adds a lot of pressure, right? Because you're afraid that if you don't do well, that has an impact for the rest of your life. And it's just so freeing to let that go and let any moment just be that moment, and allow yourself to fail and to make mistakes, as all humans do, and that doesn't that's not a verdict over you for the rest of your life. So that's what it's going to feel like when you've healed. Then the eighth trigger is criticism and judgment. Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style develops in a number of ways. It can happen through a number of circumstances, but one of the ways that is overlooked so much is criticism and judgment. So when you have a critical or judgmental parent, that is a very big contributor to a fearful avoidant attachment style, even when they weren't necessarily critical or judgmental to you, but to other people. That can also have an impact, right? But usually with the fearful avoidant attachment style, they also had that with you. And I remember that it didn't feel like my dad was critical or judgmental. It felt like he wanted to help me, and I was just messing it up every single time. And I thought if I could just get it right, then he wouldn't have to help me and give me feedback all the time. So this can be absolutely a trigger when somebody is critical or judgmental of you, which may be logical and make sense, but also, and this is more subtle, when your partner does something that you would have gotten judged for when you were younger, that can be so incredibly triggering. And it's triggering in two ways. First of all, you're like, am I safe when my partner does something like that? Am I safe? Because you have learned that you are not safe when you did that when you were younger. But also, you chose your partner, and so somehow we mix up that our partner has to then be perfect as us, and you've been trained in a certain way. Like, you've gotten certain beliefs and a way to look at the world that was safe enough for your parents, and you feel like you have to walk that narrow line. And then when somebody else does something that's outside of that, that is very scary. And the other side of that is it's out of your control. So you are in control of the way you behave for the most part. And you can walk that narrow line. You've been trained for that. And so you find a sense of control in that. It makes complete sense. But then when you have a partner that doesn't really adhere to those rules, that is very triggering, because you're afraid of criticism and judgment, but also because you have no control over what your partner does. So those two things are actually quite triggering. Then the ninth one is the possibility of having to put up a boundary. So boundaries in and of itself are triggering. When there's somebody else puts up a boundary and you feel like you've done something wrong because they are putting up a boundary, and you've learned that that's not okay, you're not allowed to put up boundaries, which of course is not true. It's very much a part of a healthy dynamic, but you know that. But also the possibility of having to put up a boundary anywhere in the near future. And the most concrete example I can give is with sex. When you believe you're not allowed to put up a boundary, or you're not comfortable with putting up boundaries, usually you also kind of refrain from sex. You don't even want to start it, because you feel like if I initiate it, or we start in any way, then I have to go all the way, and I can't say no anywhere along the way that doesn't feel good anymore. I have several videos on this. And it's so important to be able to put up a boundary, so that in any moment you can say, okay, this feels good, but this doesn't, and now I want to stop. So the fact that you might have to set a boundary in the future can be triggering in the moment. Are you following this? Let me know. Then the 10th one is not getting your needs met. Gosh, this is such a big one. And it's sad, because you probably already feel like your needs aren't being met, and they will never be met. So that in and of itself is like this existential sadness that can always be present. Like, your needs just don't matter. They can actually be used against you. They can be weaponized against you. But not getting your needs met in the moment when you need it, that can be very triggering. And for me, a very simple, concrete example of that was that when we would take walks, just me and my husband, I would get a lot of pain in my legs, in my hips, and I wouldn't be able to walk very far. And when I started specifically healing that, because I just wanted to enjoy our walks more, I realized that my no during walks was just never accepted. When I said I can't go on anymore, my parents said, don't over exaggerate, just keep walking. And it would push me past my boundaries every single time, even though I needed rest. My little body was just tired. I couldn't walk as far as a grown-up. And so I just the walking, just the hiking was triggering because that reminded me of not having my needs met when we did that before. And my body helped me by creating pain so that we really had to stop. And when I healed that, I realized that I could just say, no, I don't want to go any further. I want to go back, or I only want to do a small round. And now I don't have any pain anymore. I can walk for hours. I enjoy walking. I love walking. So it was a trigger that needed to be healed, of not having my needs met in a specific situation. Then the 11th one is the day not going as you wanted. So many memories on this one, but not you may want things to go a certain way, and when they don't, you're triggered. I've had this so often, and I've heard this so often from the beautiful people going through my programs, that why do I start crying when things don't go my way? It has a lot to do with your needs not being met, not being taken seriously, not people not listening to you. But that can be triggered in a moment when the day is going so different from when you thought. I remember one moment where it was the day after Christmas, or it was Christmas Day, and I just completely assumed I was gonna spend the whole day with my then boyfriend, now husband. And all of a sudden, halfway through the day, he said, I just need a minute for myself. I need like half an hour to do something else. And I was so triggered because I thought, out of all the days in the year, this is the day that I was completely sure that we would spend the whole day. And there was just too much going on. Like, Christmas can be stressful, right? He just needed a moment for himself, completely normal and healthy, but it felt like such a rejection. So that was very triggering. And then the 12th thing is your partner not saying the right thing or doing the right thing. And this triggers a lot also. It can trigger it not being perfect. So is this the one? But also, I won't be saved by my partner. And this is something that runs deep when you're struggling so much with the Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style, which makes so much sense, that you want to be saved. You want to be taken out of this like emotional warfare. And it makes so much sense that you want that. And therefore you want your partner to be perfect, say the perfect thing, do the perfect thing, because then they might be able to save you. Both of those are not true. They never have to say the right thing or be perfect in order for you to feel safe. And your partner can't completely save you. They can help you, they can guide you, they can save you in small ways, but not completely take away all of the pain. So that can be very triggering. I have so much more to say on all these triggers. I probably have videos on pretty much every single one of these triggers, so make sure to check them out. If we have them, we'll link them in the description below so you can watch more. But then also on how to heal them. You can heal all of these triggers, all of the specific triggers that you have. You can heal them, and it's so very doable. And the way you heal them is through a bodily processing tool. So a tool, something, a modality that helps you release it from the body. It helps to understand. Otherwise, I wouldn't be making this video. But it's very, very, very important that you release it from the body, where the trauma is stored, where the memory is stored, where the pain is stored, where the resistance is stored. And there are a few modalities that can do that. EMDR can do that. There are some somatic tools that can do that. The tool that I've used and have used to heal 95% of my Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style and these triggers is EFT, the Emotional Freedom Technique. It's an amazing tool. So that is the very concrete how to heal them. And I made a complete video on how to heal a specific Fearful Avoidant trigger in 21 days, which really is doable. One trigger, 21 days. Absolutely doable. I guide you through the 5 steps on how to do that, and you can do that with any of these that we just discussed. Just imagine how much more freedom that will give you when you don't have this trigger anymore, when it's just not triggering you anymore, and you feel completely neutral when the situation arises. I so wish that for you. So that video you can find right here or in the description or on the end screen. Watch that video and I take you through the process completely. Let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed this, whether there were new triggers that you weren't aware of, whether you want more triggers, because we can do that. I always love to hear from you, and I will see you in the next one.